Hello. Good morning.
Hi, Mark.
It's actually 12:30 midnight where I am on the west
Oh,
coast of Canada.
so thank you very much, first of all, for staying up with us. So it's really a pleasure and an honor to have somebody that's worked with household names and mega brands like Budweiser, Procter and
Mhm,
Gamble, Unilever, McDonald's, you name it.
mhm,
So we're really looking forward to your presentation on brand versus performance. Why the fight? The floor is
mhm.
yours.
Well, thank you very much. Now, I believe one of our colleagues here is going to be running the slideshow. So I'm not sure if you folks can see any slides, but if not, let's get started. All right. Thank you very, very much. And again, I want a special shout out to Dannos, a friend of mine who brought me actually to Athens to deliver a talk a few years back. And I'm so sad because any opportunity to come and hang out with you in Greece would be welcome. We've all been shut in for far too long. So for the next 30 minutes, I want to talk about brand and performance marketing and touch on what I've seen as a veteran of the marketing wars as a strange little conflict or mistrust. So the first thing I want to talk about is disruption. Now, don't get me wrong, marketing is supposed to be a disruptive business. We disrupt consumers to plant the seeds of new ideas with them. And when we find a better way to get our disruptive message out, we grab that. There is no room for hanging on to the old in marketing, as far as I'm concerned. Marketing is about staying ahead, but sometimes it is not that cut and dried. There is a difference between what is old and what should change, and things that are perennial and last forever and don't change. On the one hand, you have technology. Technology gets old, it gets old all the time. However, the importance of understanding people and human insights, well, that never changes. I've been in this business for 30 years. Those have probably been the most disruptive years that marketing, selling, and brand building have ever seen. Just to give you an embarrassing sort of revelation, I started writing copy. I'm a copywriter by trade. I started writing copy with a pencil. I'm not sure if many of you remember those, but with a pencil and then an IBM Selectric typewriter. Today, I use Google Docs. I collaborate with people all around the world instantly. I can shoot commercials, and I do shoot commercials for no budget. I run these commercials to thousands of people without anybody's help. These were things that were impossible when I got into the business. And what's most exciting to me, and this touches on performance marketing, I can measure how well all of these things work instantly. So I have seen disruption again and again and again. It's nothing new to me. So age does lend one thing that is very, very valuable in this situation: perspective. The beauty of being involved in multiple cycles of disruption is that it gives you perspective. Today, I want to talk to you about a situation, performance versus brand. And this situation, I feel I've been in this a few times before. Brand marketing and performance marketing seem to be in a bit of a fight. And I find this dumb because not only should they coexist, but they need each other. They get better because of each other. So today I want to do four things. First, I want to define what I believe brand marketing is and what performance based marketing is. People like to use words and they play fast and loose with words, especially when these words are trendy and new. And I know that performance marketing isn't trendy or new, but it's still a word that catches people's attention and people like to throw it around because it makes them feel good. But people use these words and they discover that other people have different definitions of these same words. You cannot come to a common understanding unless you have a common definition. So the first thing I want to do is start us on a common ground with a common understanding of the words. Next thing I'd like to do is to dig into what I believe is the source of the mistrust and this uneasy coexistence. And I don't think it has anything to do with marketing. I think it has to do with human nature. Next, I'd like to describe a similar situation, actually two similar situations, to this sort of uneasiness, this conflict that I see today between brand and performance. And finally, what I'd like to do is leave you with a thought on how we might develop a way to have brand and performance marketing work together more effectively. So first off, let's start with what is brand. Let's start with the definition of brand. Brand is a very, very confusing term. If you ask 10 people who are brand specialists, you'll probably get 10 different answers. I always say that a brand is equal parts of promise and expectation. First, what you promise a consumer that you or your product will do. And based on that promise, what the consumers expect from you. Now, how do you define that promise? And where do consumers see your promise so that they can define what they expect from you? Well, the answer is in everything you do. From the product you create, that reflects your promise, to the stories that you tell about that product, that reflects your promise. How you answer the phone, the writing on the box that the product comes in, the color of the box that the product comes in. All of these things, everything you do in your company defines your promise and therefore defines what consumers expect from you. So then let's go to the other side. Let's try to define performance. What is performance marketing? Now, I find the term confusing. Not the term. The term is exactly precise. It has a very precise meaning. Marketing that is driven by performance. If you do something to sell your product and it doesn't sell or it doesn't do what it's supposed to do, you stop doing that thing. That's performance marketing. However, like other words that are very, very popular today, words like meta, hello, Mark Zuckerberg. You find people use the word to cover a bunch of territory, from pure performance, like I just discussed, to an overarching umbrella of anything digital. That's why I'd like to challenge us today to try on a new term for size. And that is something you've probably heard before called growth hacker marketing. Now, Ryan Holiday wrote a wonderful book called Growth Hacker Marketing a few years ago. To him, growth hacking is all about achieving crazy, insane growth results using all the tools at our disposal today. From tweaking the product, to figuring out how to talk about the product, to where you talk about the product, to studying the response, to building in virality, to Ryan Holiday, who, by the way, got his start as a brand marketer. He was the head of brand marketing at American Apparel, a big clothing company. To him, this is as much about engineering as it is about art. Understanding algorithms and the math and the science, not so much fussing with typeface or logo size or other sort of artistic pursuits of traditional brand marketing. So that, I think, is a pretty healthy way to define performance marketing. And I like the way he describes it as growth hacker marketing, because you're hacking into ways or tweaking ways or finding new ways to grow. I like that. I like that. And I think that reflects nicely on performance marketing. So that's how I would define brand marketing. And that's how I define performance marketing. So let's talk about a little bit about the next step. We've gone through the definitions. From those definitions, you could probably see that there's a pretty big gap between brand and performance marketing. So if brand building is more about art, growth hacking is more about engineering. Brand building is subtle. Growth hacking is very straightforward. It's mathematical. Brand building takes a long time, traditionally, and a multitude of actions, everything your company does. Growth hacking is about dialing it up right here, right now, results quickly. Brand building is established. Growth hacking is disruptive. The name hacking implies disruption. But because there's this big gap and because one is established and one is new, does that mean one will replace the other? Will growth hacking replace brand marketing? What's going to happen? For that, I think we have to dig a little bit deeper to understand the actual divide we're talking about a bit better. So for a start, is this actually even a divide? Or is there a bridge here that most of us have missed? Brand marketers believe that you need to build resonance with consumers. You need to put a message out that resonates with them. You need to create trust. That takes time. That takes many actions in many different ways. Well, that makes sense, right? Growth hackers believe that you need to grow quickly in order to succeed. Well, that makes sense too. The problem comes in when one or the other discipline thinks that they're somehow superior to the other. This implies a misunderstanding of the other discipline, or not looking deep enough, or not giving the other one a chance. It's taking a superficial look. And I believe that a mistrust between growth hacking and brand marketing means that they haven't taken a close enough look at each other to figure out what the respective strengths are. It's not helpful to look at the other person or the other field or the other tribe on a superficial level. But I'm going to tell you, it is extremely human. Why? Because we as humans are tribal. We are tribal creatures. We stick together. It's how we survived ever since we dropped out of the trees. We don't trust outsiders because, well, in olden days, they might kill us. We don't trust things that are different or new because, well, if there's a new plant and we eat it, it might kill us. We're conditioned to not accept things that are new, and we are conditioned not to trust people who are different from us or saying things that are different from us. Brand marketers are a tribe. Growth hackers are a tribe. Each of us has our own language, our own beliefs, our own high priests or priestesses, our own religion, and we look at each other across a gap with suspicion. So this isn't as much about marketing as it is about human nature. Now, personally, in the years that I've worked in marketing, I have seen this gap, this divide, this mistrust happen twice before in a pretty big way, a pretty significant way. I want to talk to you about those two big occurrences where I saw these big divides. The first one was what we call above the line versus below the line advertising. Let's talk about below the line. If you're a younger marketer, there's a chance that you haven't even heard this term before. but it used to be common language in advertising agencies. Below the line was a nasty little term that was used to refer to direct marketing. Direct marketing, of course, being the predecessor to performance marketing. You put a letter out and you measure the response. How many people respond to that letter? That's direct marketing. So below the line marketing is how we separated, we being the above the line marketers, how we separated the direct marketers from us. We were the people who did the commercials that cost $1 million and won gold lions at the Cannes Advertising Festival. Meanwhile, direct marketers did letters. This sort of mistrust and animosity towards each other was counterproductive, and it was dumb. To our clients, even more, it was absolutely inconceivable. They didn't see a difference between above the line and below the line. They didn't care. All they cared about was selling their stuff. And they would just leave us to do our petty little bickering and fighting amongst each other and just shake their heads. And it didn't make us look very smart. So how did this little petty bickering war between above the line and below the line resolve itself? Ironically, through disruption. This disruption came in the form of a new tribe moving into our territory. This tribe was the digital tribe. We had suddenly digital versus traditional marketing. So the ground had shifted above the line to below the line. That was gone. Now it was old marketing versus new marketing. At one of the agencies that I led, I helped build out our first digital marketing department. Now, that might sound pretty crazy to some of you, but this was in the time when clients still weren't certain why exactly they would need a website in the first place. They didn't have websites yet. But we engaged and we built out a pretty big size department to do digital marketing based on the idea that we thought this thing was going to be a great new thing, a wonderful asset to have. But with that new asset, another tribe emerged, the digital marketers. Now, they didn't look at us as above the line and below the line. They didn't care. They looked at us all as one thing: old. They said, we are young and you are dinosaurs. I can remember the day, the room, when the digital creative director, whom I had hired, saying to myself and the direct marketing creative director, he said, within 4 years, both of you are going to be selling apples on the street. And you know what? That kind of reflected how we felt. We did feel threatened. We were scared because we thought we were old. We were going to die out like the dinosaurs. We felt like our tribes were under attack. Now, as it turns out, we didn't lose our jobs. In fact, after the dot-com crash, a lot of the digital marketers, including the digital marketers at our agencies, lost their jobs. But you know what? Dot-com bust was just a blip. We all know what happened. It came back, and today, digital marketing is marketing. It is all marketing today. I think everything can be measured. Everything can run digitally. I think that it's silly separating digital from any other type of marketing. It just is part of marketing. So, of course, we learned our lesson, or did we? Because here I am in 2021 talking to you about another silly gap, the one between brand and performance. So how do we get to a happy place? I believe that we are missing out on a great deal of good things if we don't bring performance and brand together. How do we do that? Simple, you say, right? You put a performance marketer at the table with a writer and an art director. You put a mathematics person with the artists. Well, that's what we did with digital. And you know what? That's a step. But you know what? For a whole bunch of people who like to think creatively, it's a pretty weak step. It's a sort of a reaction step. Let's put them all together in a room. That'll work. The thing is, it doesn't work. If you want to overcome tribal mistrust, you have to understand how tribes work. In every tribe, every member is essential. The old people take care of the babies. They take care of the history. They tell the stories. The young people hunt and work and keep the economy running. There are chiefs at the top. There are garbage collectors at the bottom, but everyone is essential to the tribe surviving. And everyone has to know that without them, it doesn't work. Now, that does not mean that everyone does the same thing. Their roles are completely delineated and different, but they all work together as one. How does that work in marketing? I'd like to tell you a little story about Mr. Clean. I think it provides a good example. I was on the team that brought Mr. Clean back from the dead a number of years ago now. But if you didn't know, Mr. Clean was actually in a state in the early 2000s where the brand was in such rough shape that it was in danger of being sold. 2.5 years later, when we finished working on it, the brand was named Procter & Gamble's global, around the world, the global turnaround of the year. That brand did a big, big turnaround and made a lot of money and made a lot of people really happy. Now, as part of this big project to turn around Mr. Clean, I was lucky enough to work with a brilliant creative director who had just retired from an agency called Fallon McElligott. And if you haven't heard of Fallon, Fallon in the 1980s, 90s was probably the most famous advertising agency in North America. And this gentleman really knew what he was talking about. What he saw when he looked at Procter & Gamble and Mr. Clean was this. Let's go to the next slide. Now, I don't know if you get it right away. It's probably going to take a bit of explaining. This is a heartbeat monitor. Procter, at the time, was fully committed to performance marketing. Now, remember, this was very much in the early days of digital. So this was before we had all the cool measurement tools. But Procter measured the old-fashioned way. How much cleaner was going off the shelf? How are people responding to messaging? They tested the messaging extensively. They put that messaging out in commercials, and they measured the results in the supermarket. They knew what worked, and they got better at it, and they did it again and again. The problem was, and it took this creative director telling me this, the problem was that the results looked like this heart rate monitor. When Procter put an ad out, it worked like crazy. Sales went up. When they stopped the ad, sales went down. If you're a growth hacker or a performance marketer, you probably think, well, you know, in order to avoid the gap, the drop, they need to inject virality. So people would pass along the message themselves, even when Procter isn't running an ad. So you don't have these dramatic ups and downs and ups and downs and ups and downs. You spend money, you sell, you don't spend money, you don't sell. You spend money, you sell, you don't spend money, you don't sell. That can be very nerve-wracking. You need to build something in so that people carry the message along themselves. So even when you're not running an ad, that the message continues to get out. So there's another word for that virality, or there was another word for that virality. It was brand. If a message resonates with you, touches you on an emotional level, that's a great brand message. And if it resonates enough, you pass it along to your friend. That's going viral. Let me switch gears here for 1 second. I want to talk about Apple, the 1984 ad. If you want to know how viral a brand message can be, this is probably the best example in the world. This is Apple's 1984 ad. It only ran once during Super Bowl. In fact, the agency or the client at Apple was not going to approve it, and the agency convinced them to run the ad. It was so popular that people passed it around, that newspapers and television stations covered it, that people started to hand it over to each other and say, have you seen this? Have you seen this? In fact, this ad was so popular that it spawned this whole craziness around Super Bowl ads that we see today. This ad went on to cement Apple's reputation, and it sold millions of Macs. That is virality. All right, enough about Apple and virality of brand. Let's go back to Mr. Clean and our heartbeat monitor. So what this creative director from Fallon proposed was that we complement Mr. Clean's performance marketing with brand building. And over the course of 2 years, that's what we did. We created messages that resonated with people, that they passed along, that the newspapers and the television stations reported on. The ads went viral because they were popular, because they touched people. So instead of Mr. Clean's sales numbers going like what you see here in this chart, they started going like what you're going to see in the next chart. Do you see that? Instead of going up, down, you started to see a steady, unceasing climb. The performance marketing continued, but because the brand message was there, the numbers didn't go down when Procter wasn't running an ad. So the point of this story is not that brand building saved the day, not by any stretch of the imagination. The point of this story is that marketing properly means working like a real tribe, where everybody has their role and their specialty and everybody else relies on them, or like a human body. You need your heart to do what it does. You need your brain to do what it does. You can't swap them out. They both can't do the same thing. And you can't have your heart saying, I'm going to replace the brain because it's an old brain. Everything needs to work together for the human body to function. That's how the body stays alive. Brand, performance, neither of them should assume that they can go off and do it on their own and replace the other. They need to understand what they're good at and how they fit into the whole. So what is performance marketing great at? Again, I'd like to go back to Ryan Holiday and Growth Hacker Marketing. Let's just go back one. Ryan Holiday says that building a brand is important, but it's not something you should focus on out of the gate. And when a product is launched, the most important thing is to tune it up, to understand what consumers want and how to deliver it. It's called optimizing. It's called optimizing the product market fit. And that is core to performance marketing. The end result of all the product market fit and the optimization is that you have a minimum viable product or an MVP that actually works. So to the Mr. Clean story, if I was launching a floor cleaner like Mr. Clean today, I would start by testing everything to figure out what works. What scents or smells do people want to smell? What rooms do they want to have cleaned the most? What should the name be? Where should it be sold? What price should it be sold at? Should it just be a cleaner, or should it be a subscription cleaning service? A SaaS product, something like Dollar Shave Club. Nothing is off limits. It's all about optimizing performance first. What excites me about this is that it has never been easier or cheaper or faster to measure this performance thanks to the instant feedback world that we live in. All right, so let's switch gears. What's brand marketing great at? When I worked on Mr. Clean, the brand had a 50-year history of tuning and tweaking and optimized. And Procter had a long history of tuning and tweaking and optimizing everything that they did. Everything had been optimized. In fact, the soul, the essence, the humanity, in a lot of cases, had been optimized right out of the brands. And Mr. Clean, it had been optimized out of Mr. Clean. It was time to marry the performance with the emotion and the essence that would put Mr. Clean in people's hearts. We needed to build the brand. And again, this is in line with what Ryan Holiday says. Building a brand is what you need to focus on once you know you have a winning product. Once you've done your performance marketing right, that's when you can start introducing more and more brand. Now, I know what you're saying. You just said, Mark, you said 50 years. It took Mr. Clean 50 years. Well, you don't have 50 years. And the reason Ryan Holiday doesn't like brand marketing is that it takes a long time. You aren't Mr. Clean. You don't have 50 years to build a brand. You need to perform right now. I get it. However, I'm going to challenge you. I believe that brand and performance marketing working together can do just that. I want to use an example to pull us back or to pull us to the finish line. And that example is the Dollar Shave Club. Let me finish off by talking about one of my favorite brands, the Dollar Shave Club. Now, everybody knows two things about the Dollar Shave Club. One, the insanely funny viral ad that went out. If you haven't seen it, dial up on Google, Dollar Shave Club ad. You will laugh your pants off. It is so funny. That ad was passed along millions of times. It was a brilliant piece of brand building. It really touched you. You said, yeah, that's exactly how I feel. Second thing that everybody knows is that Dollar Shave Club was purchased by Unilever after only 5 years in existence for $1 billion. That is one heck of a performance. However, what most people don't know is that Dollar Shave Club did some insanely great performance marketing right out of the gate before that ad ever came out. They understood that people hated big razor blade companies that wasted money sponsoring sports stars like Roger Federer and running fancy ads at fancy sporting events. So they, at Dollar Shave Club, made their razors cheaper, and they kept their message very grassroots. Point of interest, fun fact, the ad that you saw, the viral ad, was made, I believe, for about $4,000, okay? I used to spend $1 million making my commercials. So it was very grassroots. Next, they launched a whole new business model, subscription razors. When this came out, it was mind-blowing. Nobody had heard of this, that you get razors every month. That's crazy. People loved it. And they made it super easy to sign up. Another key foundational thing about performance marketing, make it easy to convert, to engage. By day 2 of existence, Dollar Shave Club had 12,000 subscribers. And these subscribers told their friends, so they became the sales force. Dollar Shave Club was much more than a funny ad. It was good, solid performance marketing done well, and it paid off. $1 billion sale after 5 years in existence. That, as far as I'm concerned, is the perfect marriage of performance and brand marketing. So, if this all seems like common sense, it's because it is common sense. You create something that people want, and more important, something they would love to tell their friends about, then you give that a brand that resonates with their emotions, something that they feel deeply, that they feel connected to. That is performance and brand doing what they're supposed to do together. Thank you very much. That's all for me. So do we have any questions, any thoughts?
Mark, thank you very much for the great presentation. And I'm totally with you on, brand and performance working together. They're both measurable and they, help each other. But I have a question, and it stems from one of the things, correct me if I understood wrongly, that what you suggest is that performance kind of comes first. So what would you say to all the marketeers that say, well, the funnel, we need awareness. So brand sits at the top. We start off with the brand and then try and move down with performance marketing. We need reach, we need awareness. So what would you say to them?
I think that's ridiculous. I think that what you need to do, I think you need to take a look at it from the opposite side, or maybe throw the whole diagram away. What I love about growth hacking, and this takes it outside of marketing, is that you start with the product. And you set yourself some beautiful constraints. You say, I want to be able to market this product without marketing this product. So what can I build into the product itself that will cause it to be spread by people without me paying them? And then you go, all right, like a pebble being dropped in the water. Let's start with the product in the middle. Then if the product needs some help getting the message out, how am I going to get that message out? How am I going to do it with the least amount of budget, with the most amount of impact? And as you get further and further outside, where you go beyond driving people to take action immediately to just making people feel like they might want to take action, that's where you can inflect more and more brand. I think the brand is extremely important, but I don't think that there's anything where you go, well, we've got the brand up here to make people sort of think of us, and then they drop down into the funnel, and then we talk to them here, 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 and here. I think you should start with a product. Take a look at the product. Is the product worth passing along? Is it worth talking about? So I think there's a bit of a disruption there. And I think the whole idea of a conversion funnel is very convenient and very pretty, but I think that there are ways to do it better and more disruptively.
Okay.
Does that make any sense at all?
It makes sense. I'm sure a lot of people are scratching their heads, especially in established corporations and, companies, because it kind of spins the whole narrative on its head. So,
and I'm not saying I'm right. What I'm saying is I challenge people to look at the accepted way of doing things and go, have we got this upside down? Should we even be doing this? Does this make any sense? Because I think the further you get away from common sense, the more complex it gets and the less effective it gets. At the end of the day, I'd say always start with the product. Is the product worth viral, sort of like virally being passed along, and then build out from that? So instead of going from the top to bottom, I would go drop a pebble in the middle of the pond and watch the rings go out. Each concentric ring is another way of influencing the person, but the product has to be the primary driver of the communication.
Okay. While you were mentioning the divides, I sort of came up with one more divide, and tell me if you're familiar with it. And it is creative and media. So it's always been, the media people and the creative people within agencies. And in your experience, would you say that, creative people today are aware of the new formats, the nuances of, what it's like to drive, messages through Instagram versus TikTok versus Snapchat or Facebook? And there's so many different, it's not just one TV ad that you burst out across all TVs. it's actually quite a few different digital channels with huge reach and impact that might require different tweaks or approaches. So how well do you think these two are communicating today?
I think that the answer is it depends. I think there are people who are really good at it, and I think there's people who are just feeling flooded by it. Because I mean, every day there's a new way of getting a message out, and the whole if you're excited about the technology and excited about the newness of it, you absorb all this stuff and you find ways to recombine it into new interesting things. However, there comes a point, I think, where a lot of people just go, oh my God, too many new things. You know, I always call it the operating system catatonic state, because every time you get a computer, there's a new operating system and a new operating system every 6 months and a new operating system. And then you get a new TV, same thing. And then you get a new sound system, same thing. And then you get, and what happens, all these new things start to pile up and eventually people just get catatonic. So I believe that there is a counterforce to this, in that I believe there's also great value in people who can pull back and study it, not from the perspective of the medium that the message is going to go out into, or even the message, but just pull back and study it from the perspective of the human. What does the human do in a day? How do they get through their day? And this takes it back to very simple common sense stuff again. Because I believe that if we're inundated by new technologies and we don't understand new technologies or new media, I think consumers are equally, if not more, confused by them. So I think that there's a lot of room in a very busy, noisy marketplace to pull back and go, how can I get a little zen about this? And maybe just look at it from the consumer's perspective, and then from the consumer be inspired to say, hey, this is what they do, this is what they look at, that's what I should focus on. I've seen a lot of people, and I'm sure you have too, they say, well, we've got to be in, it used to be we've got to have LinkedIn and Facebook and Twitter, and then it's Instagram. Everybody had to have Pinterest. Now they've got TikTok. And you're going, I've looked at these companies' Instagram and TikTok profiles and their LinkedIn profiles. There's nothing there. You know, and so you're going, do you have to have all those things just because people say so? Or have you studied your consumers and figured out, where do they interact? What do they do? And how do they interact there? I would backtrack and go from the consumer point of view before I start just adding new technologies.
Okay. Mark, I don't know if you'd like to add anything on your part, any parting words of wisdom?
You know, I do. I think David Bowie, he was a big hero of mine, hero of a lot of people. What apparently, when you got to know him, one of the most incredible things about David Bowie was that he was so interested in what you were doing. And he always liked to talk about what other people were doing and find out what they're doing. And he got so excited by it. And then he stole it, like any great artist does. And I think that if you can keep an open mind and a bit of naivete and not feel like you've got it figured out, I think you're going to go a whole lot further, because the world is changing so fast. I think just to have an open mind is probably the biggest talent that any of us can have right now.